Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in. This is the Live Now podcast. I'm your host, Nate Kingsley, and I'm very excited to get into today's episode because this is an episode that I've been thinking about doing since I started doing the podcast, really because politics in general have kind of been a hot button issue and something that everybody is sort of talking about now, which has not really been the case, at least during my lifetime. So I wanted to talk to someone who knows their shit, first off. And my guest today, Doug, very much does know his shit. And I wanted to talk to someone who might not agree with everything that I usually think of and see if I can learn something. And I definitely think that I did. And there's definitely middle ground to be had between people who aren't completely in line on all their different thoughts, which is the other point of what I wanted to have this podcast be about, which is talking to someone, respecting how they get to their conclusion and to their opinion, and kind of taking that logical path that they took to see how they got there. And again, just respect that person and respect that that person can have different ideas. And Doug is definitely a respectable person. He is definitely someone who thinks about what he's doing, and god damn it, you can never say that he doesn't care and that he's not involved, because this guy is. Anyway, I had a great time having this conversation with Doug, and he's just an awesome guy, and I hope to have him on in the future, and I'm excited to see what he ends up doing. He graduates this May, and I don't see him becoming any less involved after he graduates, so I'm sure that he will be up to some cool shit. But before I ramble on for too much longer, I'll cut the intro here, and I hope that you all enjoy my conversation with Doug Marino. We're good to go, my friend.
All right.
Well, thank you again for doing this.
Of course.
This is
yeah.
awesome. So why don't you give the folks who are listening kind of a brief overview of who you are, what you do, what you're involved with?
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Doug Marino. I live in Stratham, New Hampshire. I go to the University of New Hampshire. I'm a senior currently studying political science and minoring in women's studies. I'm serving as the speaker for the UNH Student Senate. So I preside over sort of the internal matters of the Student Senate. I'm also involved in College Democrats here on campus, as well as the New Hampshire Young Democrats.
Which you just won that award for.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because you said that there was the committee before we started recording.
Yeah.
But what's the justification for choosing you, other than being a cool guy?
Well, you'd have to ask them as to why they chose me. From my perspective, I saw it as an award that it was really a team effort. Because I've been active, but there are so many young Democrats across the state who've put in so much work and are running for office. Just this past week, in the town elections, we had several young Democrats get elected around the state. Yeah,
that's awesome.
So, as much as it was an honor to get the award, it really was a team effort. Everybody, as far as I'm concerned, it belongs to everybody.
Oh, well, that's super nice of you to say. All right, man, I love it. So you said you do women's studies. What does that entail? Yeah,
so women's studies is a really cool program. You can major in it, you can minor in it. It's basically the women's studies department puts on classes related to social justice issues, so things like women's rights, LGBTQ rights, racial justice, anything that has like a social justice component to it, social justice leadership. And students are interested in learning about that. Those are the kind of classes that are offered. So I'll give you a couple examples. Like I took a class last year called Disability Justice, which kind of talked about the history of the disability rights movement in the United States.
We've been talking about that a lot, because that's a big thing in my field,
right.
Obviously.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a lot of speakers that come in who are disabled with various things, talking about kind of their experience with it.
Yeah.
Based off of their disability, because some people are treated differently based off of what it is and if they're verbal or nonverbal,
right,
and that type of stuff. There was a big thing, I don't know, I think it was just Massachusetts. They just changed how Medicaid is distributed.
Yeah.
Do you know more about that?
Not really. I heard a little bit about it. I saw like a headline about it, but I didn't actually read the article. but it looked like it was a good step in the right direction. Here in New Hampshire, one thing that we did a couple years ago is this was back when Maggie Hassan was still governor. She signed into law a bill that banned employers from paying sub-minimum wages to people with disabilities, because believe it or not, before 2014, it was actually legal for employers to pay people with disabilities below minimum wage.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So finally, in the year 2014, we fixed that. It was actually
thank God. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
What was actually kind of cool is the bill passed unanimously, both the House and Senate. So Democrats and Republicans were both in unanimous agreement that had to change.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, that's I did not know that. That's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'll have to look more into what the new Medicaid bill in Massachusetts is, but I know that it was. At least from what I heard, it was more or less a step in the right direction.
Right.
But when it comes to disability, it's a very foggy area.
You never know, yeah. You have to really look into the bill itself to know for sure, yeah.
Yeah, which, I don't know, like, you definitely will look into it, but I ain't reading 170 pages of literature or whatever that goes around with it.
Right.
But I did just see, and because you posted it, the HB 1319.
Yes.
Bill just got passed.
Yes.
Could you tell people what kind of goes with that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very exciting. So the New Hampshire House just passed a bill 2 weeks ago. As you said, it's called House Bill 1319. And what the bill would do is it would update our state's anti-discrimination laws and employment, housing, and public accommodations. And it would add gender identity as a protected class. Currently, New Hampshire is the only state in New England that doesn't protect transgender people from discrimination in employment, housing, and public places. And so the House, the Republican-controlled House actually, passed a bill with bipartisan support to join the rest of New England in protecting transgender people from discrimination. So that bill will now go to the state Senate, where it needs to pass there, and then if it does, it'll go to the governor.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And how long do you think that process will take?
Well, so yesterday was what was called crossover day in the House, and what that is when all the House bills and the Senate bills cross over, and all the bills that the House passed go to the Senate, and all the bills that the Senate passed go to the House. So what's going to happen over the next couple months is that the Senate will have a committee hearing on the bill, and that will be an opportunity for members of the public to go and testify and tell their stories of incidents of discrimination and why this bill is important. And then the Senate committee will make a recommendation, and then from there it'll be voted on by the full Senate. Hopefully, maybe it could be as soon as the end of next month or the end of April. It's hard to really, or actually April is next month, man, time flies. But so it's hard to know exactly when it's going to be, but there'll be a committee hearing in the near future in the Senate.
Gotcha. Okay, but this is a huge leap in the right direction.
It's a huge step in the right direction. It's something that we've been pushing for a long time. Transgender people in New Hampshire deserve these protections, and it's really great to see movement on this issue finally.
Good. I did want to know, however, because Canada I say I don't actually know when they specifically passed it. Their bill, which was similar, does the New Hampshire one differ at all? Because I've heard more negative things about the Canadian bill on transgender protection rights than I have with the New Hampshire ones. The New Hampshire one's just kind of like, this is a protected class.
Yeah, admittedly, I'm not very familiar with the Canadian initiative, so I can't really speak to that. What I can say about the New Hampshire initiative is it's a pretty straightforward bill. What it would do, so the way our anti-discrimination statute is set up is we have our list of protected classes, race, sex, sexual orientation, disability status, military status, and there are others as well. And basically what it means is that people cannot be discriminated against in employment, if they're applying for a job or in their job. They can't be denied housing because of their identity, and they cannot be denied service in public places. And so what this bill would do...
Service in public places meaning?
Like restaurants, stores, things of that nature.
Gotcha.
And so... what this bill would do is just make sure that transgender people don't have to face that kind of discrimination in New Hampshire. And if they do, they have legal recourse. They can file a claim with the Human Rights Commission, and have the situation rectified. So it will be very, very important, not just for transgender people to have those protections, but I think it sends a great message to people in New Hampshire too, that we don't believe in discrimination as a state, and that we're going to respect all of our citizens.
Now, how many states have a bill similar to the literature in this one?
I believe 18 states total, including every state in New England, so Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island.
We were just a little bit late to the party.
Yeah, we've been a little bit late to the party, but I'm glad we're joining now.
Yeah.
Hopefully, knock on wood, as long as things go well in the Senate.
Yeah, but like you said, like a month, that's quick time. I didn't know that it moved all that fast.
Yeah, well, I mean, each year the House and Senate vote on about 700 bills per session, per year. And New Hampshire's kind of...
700?
About, yeah, roughly, give or take.
Oh my goodness, they're moving freaking 2 bills a day?
Usually more than that. I mean, it's New Hampshire's kind of a unique state because in a lot of states, the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate can refuse to put a bill forward for a vote. In New Hampshire, however, every bill that's proposed has to get a floor vote. So we vote on everything.
Gotcha. How often does the New Hampshire Senate meet?
It fluctuates. Sometimes it's only once a week. This time of year, when it's getting closer to the end of the year, or like last year, if it's a budget year, it could be much more often. The full Senate typically meets once or twice a week, but committees meet very often. So senators in particular are usually on multiple committees. So they may be in Concord almost every day with various committees.
Wow. And this is, I don't know if we said this while we were recording, but you said that all the New Hampshire senators are paid around $100.
$100 a year, yeah. That's set forward in our Constitution. So the only way to ever change that would be a constitutional amendment, which would be pretty tough because it's.
Oh, that's unanimous through all states.
No, that's just the way New Hampshire set it up. Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying the New Hampshire Constitution?
New Hampshire Constitution, right? Yeah.
Gotcha. Wow, that's nuts. And they're meeting every day?
Yeah, it's... And as I said to you before we started, there are upsides and there are downsides to it. The upside is that you have people who aren't trying to join politics for the money. And so they're generally doing it for the right reasons. The problem is it limits who has the opportunity to run. Because if you're somebody who maybe is struggling to make ends meet, and you can't afford to take some time off work to go to Concord a couple times a week, there's really not a good pathway of entry for you to try and run for office. So there are upsides and there are downsides to it.
Yeah. No, because $100 is not much. You would have, if you're in a relationship, your partner would definitely have to have a job as well, or you just have an employer that's cool with you leaving once or twice a week.
Definitely. The other benefit that you get as a rep and a senator, you get to go through tolls for free.
Hey,
so there's that.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's 75 cents that you got to go through a talker.
Right. Yeah,
that's covered.
Yeah. So, so it's not much. If you're gonna run for office in New Hampshire, you're.
But that means you're getting some passionate folks in there.
That is true, and that is another upside too. Is you're getting people who really do care about what they're doing. For better or for worse. I mean, granted, I don't agree with everybody who's in the legislature on their politics, but I can honestly say that they're all very committed to what they do.
Oh, that's good to hear. I had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah.
Because my neighbor, like I said, ran, and it was this big thing, and I talked to her about it, and she was on a couple committees, so I knew that she was going up at least, I think twice a week, maybe a little bit more, but she was retired and all that type of stuff, and she did it more because she wanted to be more involved, but she had the time to.
Yeah, it also depends what committee you're on. So if you're somebody who has less free time, you can join a committee that only meets once a week, generally. But if you're on, say, the finance committee, that's pretty much a full-time gig, and you're probably going to be going to Concord almost every day for finance committee stuff, not just committee hearings, but just general work for the committee. So on committees like that, you may get a lot of retired people who are in a financially stable place, and are able to make that sort of commitment.
Gotcha. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit more though, and just kind of ask, because are you 22, 21?
22, yeah.
How did you get, because you've been super involved your entire time here.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of get into this? What kind of sparked the interest?
Well, I was interested in politics since a very young age. My family's not political, so it didn't really come from that. The only person in my family who was political was my grandfather, and he was a very conservative Republican. So I didn't get my views from him, but
You're
I did.
A crazy liberal
You're right,
Democrat.
yeah. So I certainly didn't get my views from him. I did get some of my passion from him, though. And then, I started getting involved when I was young, too. My first campaign was in 2007 when I was 11. And so, I started out just, making phone calls and knocking on doors.
With, who was that with?
That was in the 2008 primaries. That was for John Edwards.
Gotcha.
And then after he dropped out, I supported President Obama, who was then a senator when he was running in his first campaign.
Gotcha. I didn't know, this is kind of off point, but Obama was only a U.S. senator for like 3 years?
Yeah. So he was first elected to the Senate in 2004. And he was elected president in 2008. So he served about roughly 4 years before his election.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
When I learned that. But what did he do when he was in Chicago? What was he there? Was he state senator? Or?
Yeah, so he started out as, he was an attorney and he was a community organizer working on projects surrounding low-income communities in Chicago. And then he became a state senator and sort of tried to continue his work working for people of lower income communities. And eventually, in 2004, as a state senator, decided to make the jump and run for U.S. senator. And I think one of the things that's unique about President Obama is I think the fact that he was in the Senate for as short as he was in some ways a benefit to him, because he went into the presidency and he wasn't totally jaded by the Washington atmosphere, so to speak. He entered the presidency still with a lot of idealism and enthusiasm, and
That's for sure.
And I think that that's something that served him well.
Yeah, no, I agree on that point for sure.
Yeah.
So you're an 11-year-old. Was there any other 11-year-olds at the 2007?
No, not anybody that young. There were some high school folks, though. The Obama campaign, in particular, attracted a lot of young people, which was very cool.
Well, it's because he was the young, hip, cool guy.
Right, yeah, and he was different than other candidates we had seen in the past, and young people really gravitated towards him, and a lot of these young people have remained involved, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, that is very cool. Well, I mean, you remained involved.
Yeah.
So what happened after? So you worked that campaign.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
So after he was elected, I started to volunteer with different organizations like the Service Employees International Union and like Organizing for America. Some of those organizations that were working around healthcare reform early in the Obama administration. So I was at the time. Judd Gregg was still a senator in New Hampshire, and he was a Republican. So one of the things that we were working on was trying to lobby him to vote for the Affordable Care Act, which he didn't, but it was still a fun experience to be a part of that sort of campaign. Because that was my first time being part of a campaign that wasn't really an electoral campaign, but more of like a legislative sort of initiative.
Yeah.
And so through that, I actually got to meet President Obama because he came to Portsmouth, and myself and some of the other volunteers got to meet him backstage, which was very cool.
That's awesome.
And so from there, in 2010, I worked for the Democrats again in the midterm elections, and we had a tough year that year, but we kept going. 2012, I interned for Governor Hassan's first campaign, as well as President Obama's re-election campaign in Exeter. So I worked on that in 2012. And then by the time 2014 came around, I was a freshman here. So that's when I kind of started my campus activism. My freshman year, I was helping out with Senator Shaheen's re-election campaign and Governor Hassan's re-election campaign. And then in 2016, I was the co-president of the College Democrats here on campus. So I was involved in helping Hillary Clinton and Senator Hassan and Carol Shea Porter. But before that, in the primary, I actually supported Senator Sanders and helped out with his campaign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Why did you end up choosing Sanders over Clinton initially?
Well, in the primary, it was tough for me because I like both of them a lot. I've always admired Hillary Clinton. I think that she, first of all, is incredibly brilliant, and is somebody who has a lot of very valuable experience. I think would have been an exceptional president. The reason why I supported Senator Sanders in the primary is because I was really intrigued by a lot of the issues he was raising. He was talking about issues that a lot of politicians don't talk about. Things like money in politics. Like now people talk about it, but before Senator Sanders, it wasn't quite as much on the forefront. So he talked about things like money in politics, about student loans, and these are things that the Secretary Clinton talked about too quite a bit in the general election and the issues that she was passionate about. And so I was drawn to Senator Sanders initially because of some of the issues that he was talking about, and I think that
and they definitely hit home with us.
They did, definitely,
in particular, because we're college students.
Yes,
you know how much it costs.
Yeah,
I sure know how much it costs.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I ended up supporting Sanders too when he was in it.
Yeah,
because everything he said rung true to a young person,
right?
Which is weird because he was 73,
yeah,
or whatever at the time, but he was just that kind of person who's saying what everybody's thinking, type of thing, which like a lot of people seem to be veering away, and that's like outside person looking into the political sphere.
Right.
So then once he was kind of out, I saw that picture of you when they both gave the speech.
Yeah.
Here?
Yes.
What was that whole...
Yeah, so that was in September of 2016 when Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton came to UNH. It was a campaign rally for Hillary Clinton, and Senator Sanders came to support her. And I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to introduce them and moderate the panel. So it wasn't like a typical campaign rally. The way it worked is I introduced them, Hillary Clinton made a speech, Senator Sanders made a speech, and then we made it like a panel discussion. Where we took questions from the audience, and Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton answered questions. The main topic was around student loans, and about Secretary Clinton's plan to cut to allow students to refinance their student loans and things of that nature. But so that was an amazing opportunity because I've just getting a chance to do that. It was really one of the coolest things I've ever had a chance
Incredible.
to do.
Yeah, when I saw that picture, I was just like, oh my goodness. I was just like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was super cool. And I also got to go to the convention this past election cycle, too, in Philadelphia, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that it was. Because this was a crazy time. Everything was on stage. There were so many people involved. And for you to be in kind of the main frame in a couple of snapshots of it is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's cool for someone that knows you and just being like, nice, Doug. Like, it's awesome. All right, so let's talk about a few, just because everybody's got ideas on everything, it seems, nowadays, who used to not really care, myself included.
Yeah.
But, so in terms of student loans and things of that nature and, like, fiscal things going on in terms of, like, the new tax bill that I actually asked you about a month ago.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on where we're going, what's actually kind of occurring right now, and where you think it will be in maybe like a decade?
Yeah. Well, on the tax bill, I've been very troubled by the details of the tax bill. It appears to me to prioritize tax cuts over the wealthy as opposed to providing relief to working families and middle-class people, which I think is very unfortunate. We've seen in the past that approach really doesn't work. I don't believe in trickle-down economics. I don't believe that it works the way that its supporters say it does. So that's something that is troubling to me. In terms of student loans, I haven't heard President Trump really talk about it very much. And so
Neither have I. I was hoping that you had.
Yeah, so I don't really know what his thoughts on it are. And frankly, even things he does talk about, I'm not sure what his real thoughts are, because he seems to change his thoughts pretty... what he says one day doesn't really seem to have much impact on what he says the next day or even later that same day.
Yeah, very much agreed.
Yeah.
But now why? Because I looked at the tax bill, and that's why I messaged you, because I looked at how the percentages were changing in terms of the stratification of classes, in terms of what you bring financially in each year in terms of income, and then what the corporate tax rate got essentially slashed to.
Yeah.
And I initially and still am for it in some cases, just because I know a lot of small business owners.
Yeah.
I'm currently trying to start a business.
Yeah.
So when you look at the corporate tax rate going down, it was a 15.5%.
Yeah.
I look at that as a small business potential owner, and for other small business owners,
Yeah.
it's like, that's a pretty big benefit.
Yeah.
But you're right in terms of big corporations.
Right.
But what I asked you over the message was, how is this going to affect in terms of, because the relative amount obviously went down
Right.
15.5%,
Right.
which is huge.
Yeah.
But is the absolute value going to go up in terms of corporations, the bigger corporations like Walmart, whatever,
Right.
keeping money now in America, or in the United States rather than in offshore accounts,
Yeah.
paying offshore tax rates?
Yeah, well, we're going to have to wait and see. It would certainly be a good thing if that was the case. We'll have to wait and see. I think...
Well, what's your opinion?
Yeah.
Because I agree, like, it would be awesome
Yeah.
if that's how it worked, but it's
Yeah.
just, are people wrong in thinking that is possible?
Not necessarily. I don't necessarily think that cutting corporate tax rates alone is going to have that effect. I think one thing that we need to do is cut some of the corporate loopholes. And I hesitate to call them loopholes because they're not really loopholes. I mean, they were designed pretty deliberately to be exploited, for lack of better words, by corporations to save money. I think that's part of the approach that we have to take, is cutting some of those loopholes so that businesses do pay their fair share. And I'm certainly not looking to bankrupt big corporations. They contribute to our economy and they employ a lot of people. But they do need to pay their fair share, and I think that cutting the corporate tax rate by as much as this bill did could have a very detrimental impact on the federal budget and revenues coming into federal government during a time when the economy is still sensitive, and we're still in a mode of recovery from 2008. So I think that's something that we need to be cognizant of, and that I'm afraid that this bill didn't really account for.
Now, what are some of the loopholes that you're talking about?
Yeah, well, some of the ones that I mentioned to you in the message, I forgot what it's called. There's one big one in particular that I'll pull up because I read an article about it actually when you talked to me about it a little while back, and what was it called?
They have such complicated names.
Yeah. It is quite complicated.
But yeah, you're right. Like, these things were definitely put in place when there wasn't a scope on government. So if you wanted to kind of manipulate it in any way that you wanted to for a favor of a big corporation,
right,
it was easy to do so, because I'm sure that these were put in a time when mainstream media wasn't really a thing, or social media.
Not in the same way, certainly.
Yeah. Where it could kind of go under wraps, whereas like now if something happens, I see it in 20 seconds.
Yeah. So the one that I was talking about, I just found it as the deferred taxes for financial firms on income earned overseas.
How could you not remember that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, how could I? It's So that's one that CNBC did an investigation about a little while back. So that's one of the big loopholes that I think could potentially be rolled back. But the problem is what you just said. Taxes are complicated, and so I think that one of the reasons why the tax code is so easy to exploit is not just because it was designed in some ways to be exploited by companies, but because it's hard to hold these companies accountable when the tax code is so convoluted, and complex. So there are a lot of layers to the issue. I truly hope that I'm wrong. I hope the tax bill works out great, and I hope that it helps the economy. I'm very skeptical of that at this point, but I sincerely hope that I'm wrong, because I think it would be a great thing for the country if we continue to grow our economy, and businesses had more money to pay their employees, and people had more money to spend. I think all those things would be great, but I'm just not sure that this is the correct approach to do it. Okay,
what would your approach be if you had the power?
Yeah, well, I generally favor a more progressive tax code where the wealthy pay more because they can afford to pay more.
Wealthy meaning like individuals, like Jeff Bezos.
Individuals, yeah. So typically, I'm of the opinion that individuals who are very wealthy. Again, I don't want to take away all their money because they earned it, but they should pay a higher tax rate than somebody who is in a more financially strained situation. Which that is how the tax code is currently set. The wealthy do pay more. However, the Bush tax cuts in the early 2000s did roll back the individual tax rate for wealthy income earners, and that had the impact of squeezing the middle class over the course of the early 2000s. So I would like to see us potentially go back to something closer to what we saw during the Clinton administration, when we had a more progressive tax code. Still wasn't perfect by any means, but sort of the pre-Bush era tax system, I think, would be a good place at least to start. And
what does something like that look like?
Well, I don't know the exact tax rates that were utilized under the Clinton administration. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the corporate tax rates, the highest tax bracket was cut by the Bush tax cuts, I believe, from roughly 39% to 35 or 36%, something around that ballpark, which sounds like a modest decrease, but that 3% actually does add up to quite a bit amount of federal revenue that could be utilized.
Well, because you qualify for that stratification, it's $250,000 and above, right?
I believe so, yes.
So, I mean, when you're reeling in and you start, because the absolute values of these folks, if you're truly going to pay 36%, I mean, if Jeff Bezos is the one, or like Elon Musk or someone who's worth billions,
right,
the absolute value is going to be huge.
Yeah.
But the relative value is the same for someone who's, I'm going to only say only here, but only making $250,000.
Right.
That's a way bigger hit on them.
Yeah.
Because that's a big chunk of money coming out of $250,000.
Right.
Whereas, like, if I were to take $1 billion away from $11 billion, you still got $10 billion, dude. Like, you're good.
Yeah, it's true, and it's important to keep in mind, even if the tax rate is effectively 35 or 36%. Again, I'm not sure the exact number, but with a lot of the loopholes that currently exist, some people at the very top of the tax brackets can pay as low as 15-14%. This was an issue that came up during the 2012 campaign with Mitt Romney.
I was just going to say.
Where he it's kind of funny because back then he was attacked quite a bit for paying 14%, but Donald Trump didn't even release his tax return, so we don't even really know what he paid. So it's kind of interesting what bothered us in 2012 and now what we've kind of accepted in 2016, or now 2018, but in the 2016 election, rather. So that's something that's important to acknowledge, too, is that what the top income tax bracket actually is can be deceiving on its face, because in practice it can be a lot lower.
Completely agree.
Right.
And when that stuff came out, even back in 2012, when I don't even know what the heck I was thinking, but I saw that and I was just like, of course he's paying that. I was like, if you could save half of what why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's hard to blame him, because if you're able to do it and you hire people who find those loopholes and they're there and they're legal, it's hard to blame the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, during the campaign I certainly did, because
Yeah.
But it's true though, and that's why we need laws to regulate that, because people are gonna try and keep their money, and it's understandable because it's money and everybody needs money for just about everything. So so it is understandable, but that's why it's important to have a system in place that can mitigate some of that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, because that's come out a lot. And when the Trump him not releasing his tax plan, you're like, of course he's doing shady stuff.
Yeah.
Like, everyone who's worth billions of dollars is, because you don't want to pay 36%.
Yeah.
So you have to set up a system where it's, even if you were to, because a big thing that kind of came out was people making it like an easier stratification, or there was, who came out with the everybody just pays 15%?
I think that was...
was it 15%, or am I wrong with that number?
Yeah, somebody, I think it may have been Rick Perry or somebody, or maybe even like Ted Cruz. There were a couple of candidates in the past Republican primary that proposed a flat tax rate. Ted Cruz had... he actually wanted to abolish the IRS altogether, but but I think I don't know if it was 15%, but he had some sort of flat tax rate that he was proposing.
Which is all well and good, but if you're going to now go from 15%, those guys are going to be paying 8%.
Yeah. Right, and I also don't support a flat tax because it does disproportionately affect the poor and working people more than it would affect the wealthy. Even though on its face it seems fair because it's a flat tax, but in practice it doesn't really have that impact. But it's something that seems to have become pretty popular among some Republicans, although not all. Not all Republicans support a flat tax. If they did, we probably would have one already because they control the House and Senate.
I lie a little bit more towards the right, and I do not support that at all.
Yeah.
Because with what I said with the $250,000 up stratification, like it just doesn't make any sense. It's a way bigger hit to me and you paying 15% because we got nickels, whereas someone else paying 15% and they have billions or millions or whatever.
Right.
So, what next? Because you graduate in 2 months, dude.
So I'm probably going to take a year off before I go to law school. I want to stay in state for law school so I can stay involved in politics here. But in the meantime, I may end up working on one of the midterm campaigns. I'm going to be working hard to help elect Democrats to try and take back the state house here in New Hampshire, as well as try and take back or make sure that we hold on to our congressional seat here in District 1. To make sure that we elect a new governor who will fight for the priorities that I think the governor should be fighting for. I respect Governor Sununu. I think he's a good man, but I disagree with him profoundly on a number of issues. And I think it would be beneficial for us to have a new governor in 2018.
What's he coming out with? Because I see his face a lot. So what's kind of going on with him?
So, well, first of all, I do want to. I'll start off by saying something complimentary. The bill that I talked about earlier, HB 1319, he has said positive things about that bill. I'd like to see him come out a little bit stronger in favor of it, but he's at least moving in the right direction. A lot of my problems with Governor Sununu have to do with voting rights. He signed into law early in his term. He signed into law a bill called Senate Bill 3, which really restricted the rights of college students to vote in New Hampshire. It changed the definition of, it changed the process for registration, and so we need to show more documentation. And it really seemed to me to be a targeted attempt on college students because college students had a big impact in the 2016 election. We had a pretty high turnout here on campus. And so it's disheartening to see the legislature now take steps to possibly reduce the number of people participating at a time when we really need more young people participating, especially in New Hampshire where we need to try and retain young people and keep them in the state because so many of our young people after high school and college are leaving and going elsewhere.
Yeah, well, you don't have to tell me. Almost like all the folks from my class went everywhere.
Yeah, dispersed, so that's something that has troubled me about the governor, and there are more bills in the legislature currently that would restrict voting rights that he is sort of wavering on, that he hasn't said yes or no yet. He said he doesn't support them, but he also hasn't said that he would veto them definitively. So
that's kind of crazy. Like, why?
Yeah. So he that bothers me about him, sort of the wishy-washiness. Again, he's I've met him several times, and he's a nice man. He has a good heart. He's well-intentioned.
Well, he's another Newfields guy.
He is another Newfields guy. It's actually the last 2 governors we've had live in Newfields.
Oh, I didn't know Maggie Hassan was from Newfields.
Well, she was from Exeter for a long time, but she moved to Newfields after Tom Hassan left Phillips Exeter Academy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because they lived in the...
They lived in the president.
He was
the president, or the principal, rather. And so... So those were some things that troubled me about it. I'm also was troubled by the governor. The first bill that the governor signed into law was a bill to repeal New Hampshire's license requirement for concealed carry, which I think was an irresponsible move on his part.
That was a pretty interesting move, especially at the time that he made it. I mean, we haven't really talked about the issue in terms of guns, but everybody, it seems, except for a very small population, are more gun control is needed. Yeah. Obviously.
Right.
And then he comes out with something like that. And I mean, New Hampshire, I don't know the exact stats on it, but we're definitely not the worst state in terms of gun violence by any means.
Right.
But we're not perfect either.
Right.
And now you're going to just, like, I could go get one today.
Yeah.
And open carry tomorrow.
Yeah. It's very disturbing when it's now easier in New Hampshire to conceal carry than it is to vote in a lot of places, which is sort of a disturbing trend that we're seeing.
Well, didn't it change? Couldn't you conceal carry before? without a permit, and you had to get a permit to open carry, and then he's like, nope, don't need it.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact year, but we did institute the permit requirements after the fact, because there was a period of time, I believe, where you did not need one, and then it was subsequently repealed again now by the legislature and Governor Sununu.
Yeah, because even when you did need a permit, it was crazy easy.
Yeah,
because you just went down to your local police department, filled out paperwork. I think it was $20.
Yeah, and they very rarely turn people down.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm for, and I don't know how you feel on the issue, and you can touch on it if you like, but I'm pro guns.
Right.
But there has to be some sort of restriction on it.
Yeah.
There's the march going on tomorrow in Boston.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't know that Massachusetts didn't have, because Massachusetts to get a gun is ridiculously hard. Because it takes, they give you a wait period that I think is 6 months. I might be wrong on that number. It might be 3. There's a lot of applications you have to do. You actually do have to go take a course, whether in New Hampshire, all you have to do is walk into Walmart.
Right.
But I didn't know that there wasn't legislation down where if someone is, such as the kid in Florida, who is shown to have a violent history, you couldn't go and legally take their firearms away.
Right.
That's preposterous.
Yeah.
You should be able to.
Yeah.
And it's rules like that are going to get ultimately the Second Amendment taken away completely.
Right.
Because you can't, we have to move as slow as our slowest person in society.
Yeah.
If that person is going to commit these awful acts, then no one can have this right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my attitude on guns, I don't mind people having, a handgun for self-defense. If they've gone through a background check, and ideally I would like somebody to have to go through a course, a basic course on how to handle a weapon of that magnitude. But I also believe that weapons of war, weapons that are capable of killing dozens of people in a matter of minutes, I don't believe those weapons belong...
Semi-auto?
Yeah, I don't believe that those weapons belong in society. I think that those are weapons that should be reserved for people in the military who go through years of training to operate weapons of that power. I mean, we don't even give police officers those kind of weapons on the street. So so I would like to see restrictions on those sorts of powerful weapons, as well as high-capacity magazines. I hope, I was pleased a little while ago when the president said that he was in favor of banning bump stocks, although now he has sort of backed off of that and has sort of abandoned that, which is very unfortunate, because I was encouraged.
Well, this has been a very volatile time for Mr. Trump.
To say the least, yeah.
He came out the day after, and he's gave the most NRA response ever, which was giving all the teachers guns, which I don't know if you folks who are listening to this believe that's a good thing to do. I'm gonna tell you right now, probably ain't.
No, yeah.
But and then not but 2 days later, he came out, and I forget exactly what he said, but he's just oh, we have to take action on gun restriction. And you're like, dude, figure it out. What's going on?
And now he seems to have abandoned that.
He's abandoned that idea now?
It appears so. He's stopped talking about it, and he seems to sort of have moved on completely, which is a very disturbing pattern, that we seem to have these horrendous tragedies, and then we talk about it for a couple weeks, and then we just sort of move on, and then it happens again, and then the cycle happens again. And at some point, we just need to put our foot down and say, we need to do something. Children should be able to go to school or go to a movie theater or a concert, not have to worry about that they're going to die. It's just, we're one of the only countries where this regularly happens. We really need to look at ourselves and ask why. The law has a lot to do with it, and the laws need to change, but it's also a societal thing, too. And I think we need to ask ourselves why we worship guns the way we do. I don't know the answer to that. I think that it goes back many, many years, that's something I can't answer, but I've been trying to wrap my head around it for a while.
It's a tough one to wrap your head around, for sure. I'm going to ask you the same question that I did in terms of tax. What would your plan look like in terms of gun restriction?
Well, like I said, I would like to see restrictions on semi-automatic weapons like AR-15s. I don't believe that those weapons belong on the street. I would like to see a more comprehensive background check system. One of the things that's troubling about our background check system is that If you go to in a lot of states, there are some exceptions, but in a lot of states, if you go to a gun show, you oftentimes don't even have to go through a background check. And that's something that is troubling to me. So we need to strengthen our background check system for sure. And I also, I alluded to this earlier, but I do think that if you want to purchase a handgun for self-defense, or defense of your family, there should be some sort of competency course so that you understand the proper way to use it, also the proper way to store it. I believe that people who do own guns should be required to put them in a lockbox. Because there have been so many horrendous cases of children getting their hands on guns and tragedies ensuing. We need to make sure that people who do own guns, if we're going to continue to have the Second Amendment, that people who do own handguns, there have to be requirements on storage, that you can't just be able to have it in your nightstand drawer. I just don't believe that that's proper.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of states, I don't know what the literature says for New Hampshire at least, but I know in New York they have the 3-step rule. I think that's what it's called. Okay. So like you have to have your gun, which is kind of crazy. And I don't know if you saw Jim Jeffries had that like whole spiel on gun control. And
no, I heard about it, but yeah.
Worth the watch because it's pretty funny. And some of the stuff that he said wasn't true. Some of it was. But one of his jokes was based in reality of you literally have to get the magazine, get the bullets, and then get the actual gun itself. Yeah. Put them all together. They can't all be in one place. Yeah. So when it comes to the home protection thing, I mean, it's illegal to have it, at least in New York. I don't know what it is in New Hampshire, to have it just in your drawer. But people do that all the time. Yeah. So they're not following the law because it's tough to enforce something like that.
Yeah. Another thing that's been happening over the past couple of years that's interesting is that there have been some new technologies emerging around guns. There's something, I think it's called the smart gun or whatever, where it's actually a type of gun where you need your fingerprints to use it. And what I've been hearing is that a lot of gun manufacturers are resisting making that available to the public, which is hard to understand. So that's troubling, but hopefully if that technology continues to advance, we can, find ways to have a Second Amendment, but make sure that we're ensuring public safety. Because I understand that probably I haven't seen polling, but I imagine that probably most Americans want to have some sort of Second Amendment, and I can respect that. But the way that it's being utilized right now is just not sustainable, and it's dangerous. So I hope to see that sort of technology continue.
Yeah. No, that's a good point to bring up, because I think like a teenager ended up inventing that kind of technology.
So,
that simple, because it makes that you open up your iPhone with your thumbprint.
Right, yeah.
Are you kidding me? Yeah. You can't throw that on a gun?
Right, yeah.
Because that would make, because what I, like what I said, I'm for the Second Amendment, but you are going to lose it, the people who are very for it, if you don't accept some sort of change. And also, why are you accepting all of this bullshit to happen?
Right.
Because this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, fellow Americans are being harmed.
Yeah.
Because of negligence.
Yeah, children dying in school. I mean, it's horrendous, and it's,
it's weird to see people back the other side.
Yeah.
This is one issue that I definitely I stand on the left with completely, because if you can look at these situations and fight for the NRA's fight in this, like, you're ridiculous. Like, more guns is not the answer, period.
Right.
And just how can you back this with all this crap that's happening?
Right.
It's unfortunate to see.
Yeah.
But hopefully a discussion continues to happen.
Hopefully. I'm hoping, I'm really inspired by the students at Parkland who are really taking this fight to the very top. And I'm hoping that this time is different, that we don't stop, that we don't forget about this issue, that we keep up the pressure on this. And I hope that this becomes a big election issue in 2018, and we elect people who want to get everybody at the table and come up with some reasonable solutions to this. We're not looking to take it away everybody's guns. We're just looking to find a common sense way to get a grip on this.
Yeah.
Because
completely agreed. And I don't know if are you a New England Patriots fan?
I'm actually not. Because I was born on Long Island. I'm actually a Jets fan.
Oh, dude, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, it's there are upsides and downsides. The downside is obvious. because we often don't win. But
what a nice way of putting it.
but the upside is when we do win, it's a little bit more exciting because it's like, wow, we did it.
The Jets didn't suck today.
So. But with you guys, with the Patriots, like, oh, okay, another Super Bowl,
Very true.
Are going to our 8th Super Bowl in the last, couple decades.
Hey, they're still fun to win. Don't get me wrong.
I imagine so.
But what I was going to say was Kraft actually sent the Patriots jet down to pick up the Parkland families and fly them to Washington.
That's very cool.
He flew the 17 families of the victims, and he flew families of the people who were injured in the incident.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, which was just good to see from someone
terrific.
part of this community taking a pretty big action.
Yeah, selfless. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
But anyway, I want to be cautious of your time, and I have two questions. I'll give you a nice little layup.
Sure.
Who is your favorite politician?
Oh, that's a tough one. A lot of the people who...
And you can say yourself.
No. I had the opportunity the previous semester, to spend in Washington interning for Senator Hassan. And she's somebody who I've known since I was very young and who I admire so much. So in terms of people who are in politics right now, Senator Hassan, Senator Shaheen, those two I think are just outstanding. In terms of people who have left public office, I love President Obama, obviously. Jimmy Carter's always been a hero of mine because of his philanthropic nature and his humanitarianism. So those are some of the people that I really admire quite a bit.
I like it. And I actually lied. I've got two more questions for you.
Sure.
So paint me a picture, and I know we don't have much time, but paint me a picture of what a utopian United States looks like, or a utopian complete society looks like.
That's a good question. For me, the first step, for me, sort of the ideal society will be one where no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, you have a chance to succeed, which unfortunately right now really is not the case. A lot of people, because of where they come from, are denied opportunities in this country, and I think we can do better. I want to see us be a country where, you're not discriminated against because of who you are, because of your gender identity, your sexual orientation, your race. A place where these qualities are things that we embrace in one another and we respect our differences. I'd like to, I want us to really live up to our values in the sense that all people truly are created equal, and that, if you work hard and you and you want to succeed, you can in this country. And unfortunately right now, it's really not the case because the American dream is not attainable for so many people through no fault of their own. So for me, that would kind of be the ideal. It's a society where no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, you have an opportunity to make it.
I like it. Equal opportunity for all.
Equal opportunity, yeah.
I love that. And I wanted to finish up on where you want to go. Mm-hmm. Where do you see yourself in 20 years, 10 years?
Well, I'm pretty open-minded. I hope to run for office, and wherever.
Because you said you wanted to do law school.
Yeah. So wherever I end up, whether I am in office, whether I'm not in office, regardless of what I'm doing in 20 years, I want to be helping people, and I want to be fighting for the things that I care about and for the things that I think will make our state and our country better. Things like equal rights, economic opportunity, expanding healthcare, and educational opportunities to people. So as much as I'd like to be an elected official, if I'm not, regardless of what I'm doing, that's what I want to be fighting for.
What's kind of the highest elected official you want to be gunning for, or do you not know?
I don't know. I'm open-minded. I'm open for whatever life has in store.
I like it. Dude, I think that you could do whatever you want. And I think
likewise.
Yeah, you got a good face, very articulate. I think you could go to the top if you want.
Thank you.
You
I
could do
appreciate
a 10 times better job than who's in the
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, thanks, Doug.
Thank you so much, Nate. I appreciate it.